some point will start going. I think it's going. So yes, so you're saying you had this idea you're excited about. Someone was perhaps not as enthusiastic as you wanted, and it reminded me. I've just been going through this recently, getting feedback from people, and getting feedback from people is a whole thing. I feel like a whole book could be written. A lecture series could be, or like a study. People need to study the nature of this because, it's like I got feedback, useful, good feedback at every turn, and like so discouraging. Even if it was trying to be constructive, I just feel like people overestimate the value of their like real talk feedback. When you have a fragile idea, a new idea, it's just like, yeah, of course there's holes. Everything is, it's like you could be cynical or you could just like point out the flaws in everything, but there is a time to be gentle with the fragility of the birth of a new idea.
Man, well, it's really funny you say those words precisely because the other night I was sharing with some friends that I was just feeling excited because I'm bubbling on a new idea and had brainstormed with somebody about it, and that was exciting. And the person was like, share it, could let us know. I was like, I don't think it's ready for and so there is a point at which feedback, you are going and you're looking for feedback and you want a certain critical eye to it. And I think what you're saying is interesting too, because maybe even when you're asking for feedback, there are levels of brutality. And I always think about constructive criticism, like it's so easy to be discouraging, but I guess the thing that's so frustrating is when you're walking into a situation with a certain amount of enthusiasm, your enthusiasm is like rocket fuel.
Yeah.
You can accomplish so much. So I had this conversation with this person about it. And then like in the 40 minutes that followed that conversation, this is the good, encouraging conversation. In the 40 minutes that followed, I like drew up 3 documents. I made this pitch deck and and I look back at it later. I was like, wow, this is pretty good, and the reason, the rocket fuel that I was burning was the encouragement. And I've been around the block. I know things aren't easy, and I know that there are holes all over the place. But how do you jump those giant distances? With enthusiasm.
Totally.
That's what it takes.
Totally.
And for somebody to be like, well, I think that there's somebody, it's like that's the classic too. It's just like somebody already did that, and just like, first of all, it's just like what I'm doing is different, and like, yes, I want to learn from all these things, but there's just something about that is just like, let me just give you a little cold water because I think it'd be good for you right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's helpful. It's just like.
Yeah, people overestimate the value of it, and I'm sure that I've done that in the past. I'm just, as you're talking, I'm trying to go through my like library of my slide. What do you call those slide carousels? Ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk. My little slide carousel of like, have I done that in the past? I'm sure I have. I'm sure we all have. Where you're like, and then there's sometimes when you even can tell you're doing it and you can't stop. It's like you're a lion feasting on a deer carcass, and you're just like,
people can sense the weakness, and they're just like, I'd like to taste some weakness.
Yeah. But like every kind of new cool thing could have been just like doubted. I mean, that's like everything could have been doubted
legitimately,
or just like paper cut into bleeding out. It's like. Yeah, people. That was the distinct feeling I was left with, because I had about 5 or 6 conversations. One of them was great, and it's from a guy that I don't think is like that. He's not like a blowing smoke type of guy, but he also probably just wouldn't have been very invested in tearing down my excitement and my enthusiasm. He probably would have been like, yeah, even if he thought it might not have worked, he might not have given me that. But the end result of that was generative. I came out with like, oh, I can do this, and here's a new idea, and here's a new whatever. And the other like 5 or so conversations were like valuable in that they gave me interesting feedback and just discouraging and destructive, And I just came out of that feeling like people really overestimate the value of that. I don't know why. Or maybe it's just that people who can't relate to that creation experience of something fragile that like you can't fully defend yet, It's
Right.
like you're the parent of this fragile new egg, and you can't fight off all the
As I
wolves.
introduced it, I said I feel like it's a newborn baby, and it needs just a lot of validation right now. And so, and I was
You
like,
said
that was
that
the
to,
condition. I said it that as the condition of sharing it. I was
and
just
they
like, I
still
really don't think it's just ready.
it still got crapped on.
They didn't think that they were crapping on it. Of course,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
did
yeah.
get a message the next day apologizing, saying, well, sorry, I didn't realize that. I don't know, because I've said something. So,
Was
it's
that
like,
did they know to apologize because you blew up at them, or you looked discouraged, or you stalked
I
out?
mentioned at the I sort of no, I didn't stock out, but it was definitely like, I don't know.
Thanks, guys.
No, I mean, it sort of went on a little bit, and um, no, I think it took a little self-awareness for him to realize that what he said wasn't helpful. He's sort of one of the. I mean, it's just like this is like people have all kinds of, where your expertise lies is over here. So what you should be doing instead is, well, it's just like, great.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that like after he asked me to share it, I like started to sort of like, okay, I'll share. So I share a little bit, and then he sort of cut me off and be like, okay, we have to change the subject for other reasons. So he didn't even let me get through my thing, which was just like,
yeah, that's the other thing. It's so hard. That totally happens. Like sometimes I'll be excited about something. I want to talk to Rebecca about it, but she'll be like, tell me about the such and such. But like I can't start unless the decks are clear enough that I know I'm going to be able to finish. Because it's like, okay, let me just like channel this, and then if it's like there's a kid who's going to come interrupt, or that, it's just like, it's like tearing yourself apart to pause. It's like you either start and you can get all the way through it, and she understandably probably eye rolls a little bit at that too, because it's like, the freaking artist. Now I have to let me clear my next hour for you, sir. It's just like,
especially if you have a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
like I'm sure, I definitely do.
Right.
So anybody in my circle of loving support has to sit through a lot of stuff. But sometimes what's so funny about it is that I've learned to sort of like not burden people with all of my ideas. I'm just like, people don't want to hear this as much as I want to share it, and I've sort of but there's this weird thing that happens that I'll be excited about something. This sort of a classic setup is that, and I'll share the part that will be interesting and not overly burdensome, and not sort of like cracking open my soul and revealing the pearl and opening the thing and getting it out and being like, blue. So I don't do any of that. I just sort of say, I've got something beautiful happening and I'm excited, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But the problem is that then so often gets the sort of like, well, I'm very interested in that. That sounds like something I want to hear about. And then you sort of say, really? No. And it's, no, really, I want to hear it. Really. And then when they hear sort of what it is, they're like, oh, they're like, gross.
Yeah, they're like, smash.
No, they're just like, oh, and because so many of my ideas
gross.
are sort of like are similar to each other. They're like, oh, I've heard this one before. Yeah. I know that one. It's just like, no. It's actually this nuance is gonna change everything. I fell for it again.
Totally.
So you know what I was thinking? It's like, you know how I just think of a breakaway football player who like makes it all the way to the end zone, right?
Yeah.
And it's like that's sort of what it takes sometimes, is just to have the enthusiasm and be able to sort of like escape all these people who are trying to like knock you down, and somehow get a clear lane all the way and run 100 yards before anyone knows that that's what you're trying to do. Because I mean, but here's just the last
you might
thing
even have someone on your own team who's like a big lumbering tight end who's thinking they're blocking for you, but really they're getting in your way, and you're like, just let me run.
I got it. It's like, I don't know what I'm seeing, but just let me see how far this enthusiasm will take me. And that happens, I think, with songs sometimes, where like it can happen with a group of people. If you're jamming and something's working and everybody's lighting up and you're looking at each other and everybody sees that this is going somewhere, and that shared optimism can really sort of like take things far. But as soon as it starts sort of taking fire, yeah, it's so easy to go down. But sorry, I know I'm rambling, but because the thing that hurts the most is that as a person of years and experience, it's extra embarrassing to sort of say, I think I want to try this thing, which is really crazy ambitious. And then how easy it is to get knocked down. If somebody says this is like, well, I didn't even say anything that harsh, and this person's already discouraged. I mean, how is he going to expect to pull anything off if he's that easily thrown?
Yeah.
That's the thing that I think is the most embarrassing. It's like the football thing. It's like, if you're going to play football, you got to learn how to take some hits. And it's like, totally.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But sometimes it's just like, why don't you like push me from the behind versus
Right.
being like, well, you better learn how to take it. It's just like,
But
yeah, I can get knocked down.
Yeah, I heard that same exact thing. It was the same exact thing, and and my own internal dialogue was the harshest about that, which is just like, because everyone that you hear that makes it in any kind of unlikely way, and maybe even in the more likely ways, they always talk about how you just got to keep believing in yourself, and you get told no and no and no and no and no, and then finally a door opens.
By the way, no, it's not going to work. You got to keep believing in yourself, but this is a bad idea. But just keep going.
Right. But, there's that narrative. You have to be able to fight through all the no's. And it's like, I can barely fight through like an arched eyebrow that seems unsupportive, but it also is sort of feels like, yeah, but like, you need that enthusiasm sometimes. You need just let me find the best in it, because we can all find the worst in it.
Yeah,
you give me any
so
idea,
easy.
it's easy to find the worst. You know what I mean? That's down here. Just anywhere you look, you can pick up a stone to throw at something. But to find the ways to supercharge something and to make it better and to build it so it can get there is hard, and it's noble. That's really noble work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like and I just absolutely believe 100% that anything decent that happened because somebody found a team of support, where there's a bunch of people saying, okay, even people who see flaws in things, they're thinking to themselves, just imagine on a football field again, if you're all in it together, and that your running back, whatever, can't do something basic, like they can't turn to the right. You're like, they're never going to make the end zone because they have this problem turning to the right. They can only turn to the left, and this is going to. But instead of seeing it that way, thinking to yourself, okay, this person can't turn to the right. How can I set up a block there or whatever? And so often this whole idea of, like, let me offer you some preemptive advice when I haven't even heard the whole thing and all the things that you've considered, versus being like, how can I help?
Yeah.
That is just like, you tell me, is there anything that I could do to help? Or if you start to think of something like, gosh, and understanding the rules of concepticide. This is something that somebody told. Concepticide was a concept that somebody taught me long time ago. It was a guy in a recording studio. We went in to record something, and we started playing this song. We were actually doing a movie soundtrack for this really indie movie, and they had a tiny budget, and part of the budget was to get us into this recording studio. And so we recorded a bunch of things. Actually, we recorded in our studio, and then we were getting it mixed at this place. But we started working on some stuff, and the engineer said, somebody, we started this thing, and somebody says, oh, the beginning of it sounds a little bit like Hotel California. My phone is ringing. I gotta stop this. Stop it! He says, sounds a little like Hotel California, and he goes, "Don't do that! Don't do that! That's concepticide."
Wow.
And it's just
I love that,
because what happens is, every song, if you listen to the first bit of it, you can sort of like, the first 4 chords or whatever can be in the same sort of pattern as another song. That. And if you put it in someone's head, that's Hotel California, they're going to hear Hotel
It's
California.
done. Yeah.
It's dead. It's dead.
Yeah.
And so I think if
God,
ever
I love
you're
that.
giving
Do you know
someone-
if he made that term up?
I don't know.
What a great term. What a great tool.
Because think about it. Yeah, because if you hear something in your head and it's going where it's going to go, you just keep listening to your own head and da-da-da-da-da. But as soon
Yeah.
as somebody says Hotel California, it's
Concepticide.
just like then you hear the next note of Hotel California. And
You know what I
and
love
it's like,
about the term
can't break
concepticide is it validates the concept instantly. It's like there's a word for it, there's a term for it, and it's a thing, and then you can say, no, that's concepticide. You don't have to. It's so much more effective than being like, no, don't do that because it's too early. The concept is fragile, and fragile things need to be protected. You know, you've already lost. But if you're like, no, don't do that, it's concepticide, you've won.
Yeah, you break the rules of concepticide. Yeah, should be
There's another-
illegal.
my-
People should be locked up.
It reminds me, my brother once told me a term that someone had told him, which is "don't should on me." You should blah
yeah.
blah blah. You know, don't should on me, which is another similar one.
I use that one.
You know what you should do? Oh, do you? Did I tell you
Yeah,
that?
I
Or
said-
you knew that? Well, who knows?
Interesting. I've heard you say it. I think I've heard it before. Don't shoot on me. I think my aunt says that.
Oh,
You're
it's good.
shooting all over me.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's a similar sort of thing. It's an instant. It's like a noble, righteous concept and an instant win. It's like a solid either shield or I don't know, sword.
Well, yeah, because then you don't have to explain the whole thing, because that's the whole that's what's so exhausting.
Yeah.
Is because even that night when people were saying, this is something that happened, blah 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 blah, and my idea is actually would benefit from finding all of these things. Actually,
Yeah.
what my whole idea is to find all these people that are doing all this great work and just actually tell the story in a certain way and promote it and being this like massive promotional engine for all this amazing work. And so there was some helpful stuff that came out of it, but there's just something about the energy that's just like, again, it's like you said, it's like the eyebrow.
Yeah. But so go ahead.
Well,
Wow.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I forgot what I said.
What I was gonna say is like I can feel myself doing it sometimes. Even
Shitting on people?
it's not shooting, but even suggesting helpful. You know who does something similar that you might want to talk to, and even that sometimes not that great. Someone has a new idea. It's like it's like it just reminds me of a classic dad move. It's sort of like, I'm excited about this. You could talk to about that. It's just like,
Yeah.
So I can feel myself
it
do that
really-
sometimes. It's like, here's a useful resource for.
I know stuff about that thing that you want to do. I am informed and I know lots of stuff about it. It's like, I'm sure that you do.
Yeah, but
It's I get it. No, I'm not condemning anybody for it, but at the same time, I am feeling like avoiding these people.
yeah,
It's
it's true.
something I find this out, and I'm just like, okay, I got to stay away from that person for the next 3 months.
And maybe the positive way to go forward with this is not like some people suck because they're not supportive, but like, how do you find the people, or how do you define the what people can do to be helpful? Has someone articulated? Probably someone has. Someone articulated like, here's how to be
idea.
generative to a baby idea or a creative person who has a lot of ideas, like, and it just reminds me. I remember my
Somebody
sister
should write that book.
Yeah, or maybe
A lot of
someone
people
has.
would buy it and give it to friends. They'd be like, I'm a creative person, and this is the kind of support that
Here's
I need.
what I would like.
We should write that book.
Yeah, totally. My sister once talked about either her or a friend of hers who were like appointing a board of advisors for their life. Like just finding the people that could sort of be a board of advisors.
It sounds like Lifeboat.
It does sound like Lifeboat. It does sound like Tim and Leah's Lifeboat. But it's a cool concept, and I think it could totally work for creative stuff. Like I've told you this before. Like you are on my creative board of advisors, and Anna Fogues is on my creative board of advisors, and but it's kind of like it feels like a real honor, but it also feels like real honor. That sounded funny, but it feels like
No, I agree.
like a really valued thing. And every time I have one of these calls or these interactions that doesn't go as well, I really go back to valuing what you guys bring to the table, which is just this like, when I present something to you, when I'm excited about something, the end result of that conversation is greater excitement and greater belief in myself. And that's not the norm. Most conversations, it ends up with like less belief in myself, more doubt, more feeling like I'm being grandiose or unrealistic or whatever. And it's such a valuable, precious thing to have someone, maybe it's just like over
It's
time.
a great idea. A creative
like,
board of advisors. Yeah.
Put photos up on the wall of the people who just like help lift things up and power things forward.
Fan the flames.
Fan the flames.
That's a great idea. I should do that. I should figure out how. It's also tricky though, because there's two sides of this which are really interesting. One is, if we were going to write a book, how to support a creative person who's got a lot of ideas, and that listed the things like, this is concepticide, don't do it, don't shit on them, like whatever, how you help. And I wonder if it could take a lot of advice from how to support a new mother. Because I think I remember in that stage how there's all this bad advice that goes to mothers when they have newborns, and it feels, I mean,
like really.
Granted, I'm feeling very
advice.
self-conscious about saying that, putting these on the same level, and it's not at all the same level. But I think that in not in scale, but in quality, the advice might be similar.
What's interesting about that, what I remember about that is like really certain advice based on other people's life and experience and frame that's different than the person who they're giving advice to. You have to blah, 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 or like...
You don't set this thing up, it's like this, and you better just kiss that whole thing back.
It's always given with that accent specifically.
I just want to make sure that the school is not calling. I had to run to the school earlier.
Go ahead.
No,
we've been talking for a while. We should probably wrap it up. This has been therapeutic for me.
Yeah. This actually reminds me of why we started this in the first place. We used to have these slightly more impassioned conversations about real stuff that was bothering us, and then we started doing it, and I think we were sort of like maybe thinking we had to bring more fun, but it's interesting that this is kind of stuff maybe more
I thought
important.
This was fun. I thought we were bringing fun. Were we not having fun?
No, we're
Rewind
not bringing
the
it
tapes.
though. We're bringing angst, and then it becomes fun.
I see.
But if we bring fun, then it's maybe misses some depth.
And therefore becomes angst.
Let's cut this whole part. This is stupid, what I just said.
And broadcast.